We're out here on Snacktooth Island to hunt the legendary creatures known as the Bugsnax. Today's hunt is a rather common breed known as the Strabby, so let's see if we can't find one for ourselves. Come on. Alright, we managed to find a Strabby just around this tree. Come on.
Strabby! Strabby!
You know, Bugsnax the game is actually based on a bunch of movies. Things like Apocalypse Now, The Island of Dr. Moreau, and even Aliens. So let's explore that a little bit more. Bugsnax can be a tricky game to condense into an elevator pitch, but here goes. You're a journalist on Snacktooth Island, who's traveled there to find the missing explorer Lisbert Megafig. Lisbert led a colony called Snaxburg, which is full of Muppet-like characters called Grumpuses. The island is also populated by the titular Bugsnax, roving edible creatures that are equal parts adorable and appetizing. Most of the game involves catching the various Bugsnax and feeding them to the Grumpuses who live there. Doing so makes them more open to questioning, which will lead you closer and closer to finding Lisbert herself. The video game influences on Bugsnax are very apparent. Pokemon Snap, Viva Pinata, Animal Crossing, Pikmin, but there is also a very powerful influence from movies, the key ones being Apocalypse Now, The Island of Dr. Moreau, The Wicker Man, and Aliens. By examining the motifs of these films, we can gain a deeper understanding of the motivations behind Bugsnax. Hold on a minute, I thought Bugsnax was more of a kid's game. You know, those movies you listed can get pretty dark, mate. My poorly accented counterpart does bring up a good point, but the Grumpuses are deceptively cute in their design. The Sesame Street-like facade almost tricks the player into facing serious issues and interpersonal conflict. There is a lot we could analyze with these four films. I mean, one of Nick Cage's most meme-tastic lines is straight up in the game.
How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
I don't know!
But we're going to focus on three key aspects that these films have in common: charismatic leaders, isolation, and permanent changes. These are intersecting ideas, as each slowly bleeds into the next. The charismatic figure can draw you in, you wind up in an isolated place, and your experiences there fundamentally change you as a person. Yeah, I'm probably gonna go ahead and take off then, mate. That sounds a little too deep for me. Also, I'm getting hungry again. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Especially since we have a guest. I was able to sit down with Bugsnax's creative director, level designer, and writer Kevin Zuhn. As they explained, those aforementioned movies had a major influence on the game's plot and setting.
Apocalypse Now we brought up a lot because that is a story about going to find this leader who has gone missing. Island of Dr. Moreau is, of course, more directly relevant as an island full of strange characters who have been mutated.
So to start, let's talk about the charismatic leaders of those two movies. In Apocalypse Now, Martin Sheen's Captain Willard is sent to assassinate Marlon Brando's Colonel Kurtz, a man who's gone too far in his war tactics, commanding troops who will follow his unsightly orders without question. In The Island of Dr. Moreau, the whole disturbing quasi-zoo is run by, well, Dr. Moreau, again played by Brando, so that's interesting. Aside from the same actor, these two share a key characteristic. Other people talk about them well before they make an appearance themselves, and they're described with an almost religious reverence. As Dennis Hopper's photojournalist puts it when asked about Colonel Kurtz,
He's a poet warrior in the classic sense. I mean, sometimes he'll you'll say hello to him, right? And he'll just walk right by you, and he won't even notice you. And then suddenly he'll grab you, and he'll throw you in a corner, and he'll say, "Do you know that if is the middle word in life?"
Val Kilmer's Montgomery talks about Dr. Moreau in a similar way. On paper, what he's saying could read as negative, but there's a clear fascination in his delivery.
He became obsessed with his animal research.
In The Wicker Man, we get a double dose of this. Nick Cage's Edward Malice is searching for a missing girl, Rowan. Letters and pictures are all we have of her. Simultaneously, the island on which she lived is run by Sister Summersisle, who receives what I can only describe as worship.
She's everything. Everything you see, all of it, really, is her. The rest of us, we live in her shadow.
The developers at Young Horses took this same approach when constructing the character of Lisbert.
The interesting thing about that is how much of Lisbert's personality is delivered by other characters talking about Lisbert.
What we know of Lisbert comes from talking to her friends and from her personal records. As you explore Snacktooth Island, you'll uncover some of her notes and video recordings, much like how Willard listens to voice recordings of Kurtz before accepting his mission. And of course, you'll interview each resident of Snacksburg in time, learning their own opinions of their great leader. These give insight into Lisbert's goals, her likes and dislikes, and her treatment of others.
The important thing was to establish kind of what the fault was in her style of leadership, which is that she did it all herself. She never delegated. And that is the reason they all fell apart when she left.
What Kevin is describing there is codependency, an over-reliance on another person for your sense of self. Consider how Dr. Moreau is treated by his creations. His abominations call him father, and some of his greater successes, whom he likewise calls sons, are literal servants to him. But when their father is killed, they fall apart. Azazello turns to violence, running around the island with a forbidden gun. Montgomery, the once stoic research partner to the Doctor, goes mad, adopting the Doctor's personality as his own. Reliance on a charismatic figure, cult leader, hero you admire, however you want to label it, leads to a breakdown when that person is absent. This is immediately apparent in Bugsnax, as the residents of Snacksburg left the town upon losing Lisbert.
You couldn't even keep us together for one day. I honestly don't know what Lisbert saw in me.
Even before this loss, the characters are already separated from the rest of the world, so let's talk about isolation now. First, it's important to point out that isolation doesn't just refer to the area around a character. There's an isolation of the setting, yes, but also an isolation of the self. Then you have to ask yourself how the intrepid hero even gets to this location in the middle of nowhere. In Apocalypse Now, Willard takes a long boat ride up the Nung River. In The Wicker Man, Edward Malice takes a puddle jumper to Summersisle. Dr. Moreau's hero is also named Edward, so that's interesting. And he does both. Survives an off-screen plane crash, then drifts on a raft. In Bugsnax, you survive an airship crash yourself. From there, you're free to explore Snacktooth Island, and having the whole game set on this small floating bit of land was a deliberate choice on the developers' part.
Part of it is setting a limited boundary, because exploring the island is a big part of it, and you will explore all of it, and it limits the scope of who can show up in this story and why.
As Kevin points out, an isolated setting drives the plot. Consider the island where Malice finds himself. Rowan is missing. Well, this is an island, so she must be somewhere on it, right? In Bugsnax, Lisbert is missing. Well, this is an island, so she must be somewhere on it, right? As these characters begin their search, they slowly find themselves going into deeper and darker territory, and the sights get stranger and stranger. Ultimately, when they find what they're looking for, like Rogue Soldier Colonel Kurtz for example, they're facing the strangest sight of all. Now you might have noticed I've yet to reference aliens. I gave you a spoiler warning earlier, but seriously, spoiler warning here. Like the biggest spoiler in the game warning. Okay. In Bugsnax, when you finally find Lisbert, she has been fully transformed by the snacks, mutated into a chimera of cake and sushi and curly fries.
Our point of reference for that, and we'll call it the Queen, was more the Queen Alien. Generally speaking, all of the Undersnacks are thought was alien, or specifically aliens when they kind of get into the hive and the whole ship has become covered in alien mass.
The Undersnacks reference there is pretty clear in terms of set piece design, but the parallels go deeper than that. As I said a moment ago, our characters find themselves experiencing stranger and stranger things as they get closer to their goals, and often there's a secret preventing them from completing said goals. It's an island, so there's a limit to where your missing person can be, right? Well, perhaps on the surface. Often that secret is either a private action the characters take, like the Wicker Man's Harvest Festival, or a physical location that is sequestered away. That would be the Undersnacks, hidden beneath Snacktooth Island. That's isolation of the setting, but isolation of the self is also just as important here, because as trite as it is to say, we are all products of our environments. Therefore, what we experience externally affects us internally. This is where our three motifs really start bleeding together. Isolation leads to permanent changes for both charismatic leaders and their followers. Furthermore, just as isolation is both external and internal, the effects on our characters are the same. I know that was pretty abstract and murky, so let me first break this down in Apocalypse Now. Willard is haunted by his time in Vietnam, as any veteran would be, so even prior to the events of the movie, he is internally scarred by his time on deployment, away from his familiar Western world. This is readily apparent in the opening moments of the film, as he spirals in his hotel room. Externally, his transformation comes in the final moments. As he emerges from the water, defeats Kurtz, and leaves the cult behind, his face is covered in camouflage paint. This is the only time in the film when his face is obscured like this, and it's indicative of his new, permanent transformation. He was a soldier, but now he's an assassin. Similarly, Ripley is haunted by the events of the original Alien film when we meet her in Aliens. She's a veteran too, although her war was with a xenomorph. The results of her journey in the sequel aren't revealed until Alien 3, but she too undergoes a physical change, and it's the one the Alien series is known for. She's carrying an alien embryo inside her own body. In Dr. Moreau, Edward Douglas will never forget the horrifying events he witnessed on the island. In fact, the entire story is told from the perspective of chronicling his adventure in a book. He is also literally scarred from the experience. It's revealed near the end of the film that his blood was drawn in an attempt to make more serum for the human-animal hybrids. Speaking of which, the parallels between the animals and the citizens of Snacksburg are pretty clear, what with mutated body parts and all. The citizens undergo these changes when they eat Bugsnax, but Dr. Moreau inverts this. There is no consumption of meat on his island. All the mutations are deliberate experiments. So, that's interesting. Finally, Wicker Man's Edward Malice undergoes his internal turmoil early in the film. After witnessing the apparent death of a mother and daughter in a car crash, the image and sounds of a little girl resurface throughout the entire story. As for physical changes, well, he does burn alive, so that's probably the most drastic example. What this all means for Bugsnax is a similar dichotomy of internal and external changes. The external shift is pretty obvious. The Grumpuses of Snacktooth Isle have their literal body parts transformed with each snack they scarf down. And when all is said and done, and the island is left behind, each one confides in you that they've learned some sort of lesson, something they'll take forward as they return to their previous lives on the mainland.
I don't need to be all-powerful to give good advice. I just need to be me. And those who listen will listen.
But you, the journalist, must also be scarred by the image of a monstrous Lizbert, the logical conclusion of an obsession with Bugsnax. If we ever do get a sequel, I'm sure we'll explore the repercussions of those traumatic memories.
Hey, thanks so much for watching that video, and thank you to my buddy Ryan behind the camera for helping me out with this one. If you want to keep up with everything Framework is doing, definitely hit that subscribe button in the middle, and if you want to see the last video we did, hit that end card there on the left. Thank you once again for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you all in the next video.